Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Introduction to Data Storytelling with Power BI. I'm Michelle Robinson, the Learning Center Director here at SystemSource. In the next hour, you'll discover how to harness Power BI to create dynamic, data-driven narratives that can drive smarter decision-making. We're going to explore the techniques and best practices you see on your screen here to help you get started with your own storytelling projects. But before we get too far in, I wanted to let you know that if you ordered and have not received your pizza, please email Julie Dellinger. Her email is there on the screen, and Julie will follow up on it for you. Just a few other housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, and the link will be shared with you afterwards. We encourage you, of course, to ask questions. Please type them into the Q&A box at any time, and John will address them during the Q&A segment at the end of the presentation. And if for some reason we don't get to your question, John will email you the answer afterwards. If you experience any technical difficulties, please use the chat feature, and our support team will gladly assist you. At the end of the webinar, we encourage you to fill out a short survey. Your feedback is actually very valuable to us. To encourage you to do so, we're even going to do a drawing for a $50 gift card, actually two $50 gift cards from the surveys that are completed. For those of you new to SystemSource, I'd like to briefly acquaint you with our services. Many of our clients come to us first to ask for help improving their IT operations. Clients may need IT and end user training, or classrooms to train on their own proprietary systems. Others rely on us for presentation systems rooms, including collaborative conference rooms and classrooms. And many require the expertise of our top IT consultants who specialize in cloud migrations, systems management, project management, and of course, infrastructure design. Our team offers proactive support through our managed services group and then reactively through our dispatch desk. When improvements and maintenance is done efficiently, then money may be available to acquire new equipment and refresh systems. At SystemSource, we're dedicated to educating IT and business professionals. Today, as part of our free webinar series, we're excited to share insights that can help you transform your data into compelling stories. It's my pleasure to introduce today Jon O'Keefe. He's the SystemSource lead instructor for business intelligence and AI. With decades of experience in education, Jon has helped numerous organizations learn to transform their complex data into insightful stories that resonate with diverse audiences. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jon O'Keefe as he guides us through the fascinating world of storytelling with Power BI. Jon, over to you.
All right. Hi, everybody. We got to figure out a different way of saying that I've been doing this for a long time, because decades of experience, that's starting to feel a little weighty on the shoulders here. I'm not so sure that I love that phrase. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing today? I am Jon O'Keefe. I am an educator here at SystemSource. I've been involved in IT and data science for decades. That is a true statement, unfortunately. When I hear decades ago, I think of 1980. I don't necessarily think of when I joined the workforce, but I'm old, and what can I do about it? Nothing. I feel very seasoned, so I have no problem with that. Today, we're going to be talking about one of my absolute favorite topics, and that is data storytelling. Now, you're saying to yourself, well, Jon, what exactly is data storytelling? And so, let's talk a little bit about what I mean by that. So here, I'm going to take you in to a Power BI report. Now, a Power BI report contains a variety of different elements that we use in order to take data that we have in our organization, whether it's raw, like untouched data, or data that's been curated for us. We load it into Power BI, and through a variety of processes, which I'll go over through the course of this webinar, we might end up with something that looks a little bit like this. As a matter of fact, at the end of this presentation, we'll have something a little similar to this. It might look a little different, but this is a Power BI report. And there are lots of components of a Power BI report, which then typically will get uploaded into the Power BI fabric, which is the cloud. And then we'll share it with our coworkers, maybe our friends and family, who knows? You know, you never know what you're going to do with these things. And then through that process, we'll create something called dashboards. Dashboards are snippets from a variety of different reports that we use to make decisions every day at our organization. Now, one of the biggest challenges a lot of data science projects have at the offset is that when it comes to answering a question that your organization has, whether that's why are some of our items underperforming at certain stores, why is our staffing so weak on Thursday nights when every other night we have extra coverage, why are our projects tending to stall around the 75% complete mark, really doesn't matter. All of these things are all questions that we get asked at our organizations. And oftentimes the answer to that is buried in our data. Now, the difference between a good data scientist professional and a great data scientist professional is not how they load in their data. It's not how they necessarily build their visualizations. It's how they tell the story of that data. And Power BI is a very powerful tool that allows us to, at the beginning of the process, in the middle of the process, and at the end of the process, craft an effective data story. And all that really means, if you want to break it down into a 30-second tidbit, is this. I want to take the information that my organization has, and I want to use it to answer a question. But I want the answer to that question to be so obvious to the people looking at my reports that there is no possible way that it could be misinterpreted and therefore either ignored or undervalued. And that is what data storytelling is. It isn't just creating a report inside of Power BI. It's learning how to use many of the features inside of Power BI to make sure that the message is loud and clear to those who are looking at it. Sometimes that person might even be you. And once you realize what that message is, you want to make sure that everybody else sees it and doesn't come away with some misinterpretation. So this is Power BI. If you've never seen it before, it is a program that allows us to load in data from over 300 different data sets, different types of data, including the Microsoft data lake and data hubs that they've set up, and then take that data and turn it into meaningful visualizations and narratives that we can use to tell our story. So this is what a typical Power BI report might look like. And you can see we have some key elements of data storytelling already built in here. We have what we call a slicer, which I'll build and show you how that works. We have a narrative that is part of our data project here. We have tooltips that can be used in visualizations to give us additional information. Now let's start at the beginning so I can show you how we go through the process of telling an efficient data story right from the get-go. Here, I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. I'm going to go ahead and open up a folder here on my desktop that is for our Power BI webinar. And in here, you can see that we have a variety of different file types. And in our file types here, we have some JPEGs, we have some JSON themes, we have an Access database here, and we have a CSV file and an Excel file. Now, if we go ahead and look at this Excel file here, this is something typical that you might be handed at your organization. Now, obviously, your organization here may have different types of data, do different types of things, but I think we can all agree that we have seen data files that look similar to this. And so here you can see we have an Excel file. This looks to be transactional data, maybe from an online ERP system where we catalog our sales. maybe from store sales systems or other POSs. Really doesn't matter. You can see here that we've got multiple columns. We've got order ID, dates, shipping methods, customer ID, product ID, how many things we sold, how much we did there, what the profit was, what it cost us to ship. Now, you may be looking at this data and you might be saying to yourself, okay, I could probably answer some questions with this. And so that's a great place to start. And that's typically where most data science and data storytelling projects will start. You'll be handed a set of data. You'll be given some questions. And then from there, you will start putting together what it is you need to answer that question. In our case here, we work for an organization called My Footprint Sports. They are a sporting goods conglomerate. You can think of Champs or Dick's Sporting Goods or anything like that. They have stores all across the country. This is our sales that we've done to a variety of customers from a variety of different locations. And we are going to go ahead and load this data into Power BI and then start asking some questions of it. Now, right now on my system, as you can see, I have access to the original Excel file, which is great. And a lot of the things I'm going to show you that you can do inside of Power BI can absolutely be done in Excel before you even load the data in. I can create new columns in here. I can make relationships. I can analyze and make sure that things are working correctly inside of Microsoft Excel or any other program like Microsoft Access, SQL, etc. One of the big challenges that most people have when it comes to utilizing end user BI, self-service BI, what Power BI is really good at, where someone who has a good set of data skills can take something like this and turn it into good visualizations, is that we don't always have access to the raw files. What I've got here is because I'm an educator and because this is a file that I can create and all of that, but in many organizations, you won't be able to play around with the originals. So Power BI has to help us at the beginning part of the data storytelling process, which is loading in and transforming our data and making sure our data relationships work correctly. So I've got a bunch of different stuff that I want to load into Power BI. So let's get started telling our data story. Where most Power BI projects will typically start is with a blank report. There are lots of ways to get different report templates and whatnot inside of Power BI, but for our purposes here, I'm going to start absolutely fresh. So this is the Power BI interface, a program loaded on my computer. I'm going to start with a blank report. Once loaded in here, you can see this blank report has nothing. On the right-hand side of the screen, in my data pane, I've got no data. I can't build a visualization with no data. So the first thing I have to do is connect some data sources to my Power BI. Now, this may feel very rote, and in some organizations it might be, but even at the very process of loading in and looking at our data, we're going to start to tell our data story. So number one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tell Power BI I'd like to grab some data. Here, the first thing I want to do is grab an Excel workbook. I'm already pointed at the location where that workbook is stored because I cheated and I've already done this a million times, but you go in, you find where your data is stored, you select it, you click open. And now Power BI is going to say, hey, John, I've noticed that you'd like to load in some potential data from an Excel workbook. And as you can see, Power BI has detected 3 sheets inside my workbook. My first is a product sheet, which if we take a look at here, shows me a list of products. It has a few categories here. It has a product ID, also has a product name. It has a unit price, it has subcategory, category, etc. Okay, great. I absolutely want to have that because I'd like to look and analyze my data at the product level. Awesome. Some other things inside of here are sales orders and sales orders 2019 and 2020. That means my organization wasn't kind enough to append these 2 sales queries together. So I've got two different sales queries, which inside of Power BI can pose a little bit of a challenge. Since Power BI works on a query system and loads tables, if I have two different worksheets here, I might need to combine them. Now, obviously, if I have access to the raw Excel file, I could do it inside of Excel, but that's cheating because most people don't have access to the raw files. So I'm going to go ahead and do it inside of Power BI. So here, the navigator allows me to look at my data. This gives me a preview of what is in one of these worksheets here. I can check out each worksheet. I can see my what Power BI will assign as column headers. I can look at how the data might be formatted. In this case, some things that we might note here are that we have far too many decimal places in some of our columns. We might need to change that. That is all part of the data storytelling regimen here. So in order to load all these things in, I simply go ahead and I check them. Now, if these data sets were perfect and they were everything that my heart had desired, I would just simply hit load and it would load them in and they would show up in my data pane here. But because this is a class on data storytelling, we're going to transform our data to make sure that we're telling the story the way we want to. By hitting transform data, this opens up the Power Query editor. Power Query may be something you're familiar with if you use a lot of Excel. It's based on the mashup language or M language. And it is a little bit, it's part of Power BI, but it's also a separate application. It's got its own window here. And this allows me to query and create data tables, which we call a semantic model, that can then be used to build visualizations. Now, one of the really cool things about Power BI is that let's say that you're really good at this, okay? You love playing around with columns and shaping and transforming data. That's who you are fundamentally. But you're not a visualization person. Power BI allows us to create semantic models which can then be shared with other individuals who can then use them to build visualizations on their own. So sometimes you might, when you're doing your data storytelling, you might need to tag team it. You might need to have one person who makes the visuals, the other person who transforms and shapes the data. Power BI allows us to do that very seamlessly. So number one, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at our data here. I've got this product table here. Now, Power BI, when you load in data, does everything in column format. So every different thing that you want to build into a visualization comes from a column. Power BI does not do row level analysis. It can, but it's not really designed for row level analysis. It's designed for column level analysis. These will be the variables that will go in to build your visualizations. One thing I'm noticing here is that I have a product ID column and a product name column. Now, inside my organization, there are people who work in purchasing, warehouses, shipping, and they primarily know all of our products by the product ID. But a lot of our other stakeholders who will be making decisions here know our products by their name. And so this might pose a challenge to my data storytelling, something that I might need to solve for. Luckily, we'll be able to solve for that. But this is one thing that you want to consider when you're telling your data story. And this starts at the very beginning of your data transformation, is that how are people inside your organization from varying departments going to engage with your data? A way of thinking about this is if you're building something with project numbers, how many people inside your organization are project numbers meaningful to? If it's only a small amount of them, you may need to create a new column or combine columns to create a more meaningful way of analyzing this. In our case, I'm going to want to combine our product ID column with our product name column. So I have a singular column that I can use in order to create visualizations. So whether you work in the warehouse or whether you are the CEO, you know exactly what we're talking about when you're looking at my visualizations. So while we're not even building a visualization yet, the data storytelling mindset starts here. What columns do I need to effectively tell my data story? And since I have people inside our organization that want to look at it by product ID, and I have people that want to look at it by product name, I'm going to need to combine that somehow. Another piece of my data storytelling comes when we have too much information. Sometimes I'll see data projects put together. I'm actually working on one right now, where the questions they're trying to answer are not that bad. They've got good questions. They want to, you can see that they put thought into analyzing their data, but they're collecting a ton more than they need to, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But when you're building out visualizations or building out semantic models to pass to people to build visualizations, you may need to look at data and say, boy, I don't think this needs to be here. And that is especially true when you're looking at high cardinality items. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, cardinality refers to how bits of data relate to one another. Inside of Power BI, you'll have high cardinality columns and you'll have low cardinality columns. Now, there's nothing wrong with having high cardinality columns, except that when you've got them, they can slow down your data model. Now, in our case here, we've only got a couple thousand rows of data, so even a high cardinality column wouldn't really slow us down that much. But when you're looking at very, very large data sets, millions of rows, remember Excel, an Excel worksheet can have over 1 million rows of data in it, just over 1 million. I think it's 1,048,000, something around there. You combine that with 20, 30, 40 queries, you've got a lot of data that's loading in. And high cardinality columns can absolutely cause problems. One of the first things that you'll typically do inside of your data transformation behind the scenes here is look for things that you just don't need. Because at the end of the day, part of data storytelling is telling a simple story, a story that makes sense and a story that's obvious. So having extraneous things on here isn't necessarily what we want. Now, doing some data analysis here, can take a look and inside the Power Query Editor, look at the cardinality of my columns. Typically, for something like this, I'm going to want to see a low number of unique and a high number of distinct. When you've got high unique and high distinct, that means that each row, for example, here in our ID column, we have 1,000 distinct and 1,000 unique. That means each of these rows is a unique value. That's not so good. That's a high cardinality column. So all of these columns to the right are fairly low cardinality. This one over here is high cardinality. So one of the first things you want to do when you're telling your data story is remove extraneous data that might slow down your data model. And it's very easy to do inside of the Power BI Power Query Editor. I can simply right click on any column and just simply remove it. Now, another thing you're going to notice here is that I have sales orders and sales orders 2019 through 2020. Let's take a look at what's going on there. When we look at sales orders 2019-2020, we're going to see here that we can go ahead and sort by ascending, and I've got data that goes from 1/14/2019, sorting by descending, that goes to 12/27/2020. So this is a data set as it's labeled that goes from sales 2019 through 2020. In my sales orders, the regular one, if I look at my order dates here, I can see that our last sale occurred on 12/31/2023. This is older data, obviously. And then but the first sale in this set here, 1/3/2021. So these data sets back up to one another and they have the same column structure. So one of the things that you'll want to do typically inside of Power BI to tell an effective data story is when you have multiple sets of data that are in the same structure, it's usually better to have that run as one table than multiple tables. Because typically when I want to analyze data, I want to analyze all of my sales data and then filter from inside there, as opposed to artificially filtering because I have two different data queries here. I'm going to combine these two. Now, I don't need to go back to Excel and do it, even though we could. We're going to pretend we don't have access to the raw data files. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to combine sales orders and sales order 2019-2020 by simply clicking append query, telling Power BI how many tables I'd like to append. If I had 6 or 7, I could do all of them. Or since in this case I've only got 2, I'm going to leave it on 2. And then I'm going to go ahead and tell it to grab sales order 2019-2020. Now I'm going to click OK. And now when I sort by order date here, you can see that my sales orders now goes all the way back to 2019, which means I don't need to do any sort of artificial visualization building with both of these queries. I now have them combined into one query. To make life even easier, I'm going to go ahead and tell this not to load. The data is still present in the semantic model, but now when we go ahead and we save this, it's not going to load in and be an option for someone building the visualization. All of our sales are now just in one place here. So I'm going to go ahead and click close and apply. Now I've gone from no data to a products and a sales order data set over here. And I can start building visualizations right from here and start my data storytelling. I have a couple of other things I want to grab really quick. If you guys remember, we had a CSV file in there. That CSV file will load in, and once again, I'm given the option to transform this data. When you load a CSV file, which is a common way of people storing very large data sets because it's flat and it takes up less space than other methods, here we're going to give the option for it to be a comma delimiter, and we're going to go ahead and load this data set in and transform it. Now, once again, I have a data set that I'm loading in. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name of it because this is just customers. I don't need it to be anything else. The name just can be customers, and you can change that easily right inside of the Power Query editor. Now, when I do transform and shape this data a little bit and I load it in, it'll be easy for someone to recognize exactly what that is. Once again, data storytelling, making it easy for people to build off of the data that you set up. Now, I'd like everyone here to take a look at our columns. I have a customer ID column that has a high cardinality, but that customer ID column is going to make a data relationship for me. So I need that column. I'm not going to delete it. I need it. It's fine. It's there. I need that to form a relationship between sales orders, which has a customer ID column, and my customers query, which has a customer ID column. Relationships are important, especially inside of Power BI. Now, one other thing I'm going to note here is that I do have a problem with this data. So I'm going to give all of you 15 seconds to take a look and look at these columns and tell me if anybody sees an issue with my data here. Michelle, maybe you could chime in. Do you see a potential issue with this data here? I don't know if Michelle is listening or not, but if she's here, do you see a potential issue with one of these columns? I'm going to make it easy for you guys. This is a zip code column. And what's the problem that we have? Well, Massachusetts zip codes start with a 0. And when this Power BI loaded this data in, Power BI does not like leading zeros. The same way Excel doesn't like leading zeros. So once again, another part of the data storytelling that we have to do is we have to make sure all of our data is accurate. So here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change the type of data that is in this column. I'm going to tell Power BI that this is not a number column, because when I tell it it's a text column, now I get all of my leading zeros back, and we can use this zip code column to build a map. So here, we're going to go ahead and close and apply. And now we have customers, products, and sales orders loaded in. Now, another component of data storytelling is, let's say that I want to build a map. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the map visualization, and I'm going to drag city over to location. Sometimes Power BI will be able to guess what I mean by city, but other times Power BI will not be able to guess, and therefore I need to tell Power BI exactly what type of data that I have. So part of my storytelling process is also going to be looking behind the scenes at my data and looking at how the columns are categorized. Here, we've told Power BI that this is a city column, it's text, but Power BI doesn't know what type of data it is. So when I take and I tell Power BI that this is a city, this is a state, this is a zip code, and this is a country, Power BI now recognizes that this is mapping data and will allow me to use it to build a map visualization with it. So now I can go ahead and load in state. And depending on whether or not a relationship has been created between my customers and my sales orders, I can interrogate this data by sales. We'll make sure all of that relationship stuff is set up in just a second. Now, going back in and looking at my data and looking at my sales orders, I'm going to notice I still have this ID column, which is high cardinality, and I'm not going to use to analyze any of my data. So I still want to remove that. I also here feel like I'm missing some information. I have a sales column, which shows me how much I sold. I have a profit column. I have a shipping cost column, but I don't have a regular cost column. As we all know, sales minus profit will give us cost. So I want to go ahead and create that. Obviously, once again, if you know Excel, this is a simple formula inside of Excel. Well, guess what? It's also a simple formula inside of Power BI. I'm going to go back into my Power Query here, and I'm going to create some columns. The first column that I'm going to create is inside of sales orders. I want to calculate for cost. And so for me, cost is simply going to be sales minus profit. There's an add column feature up here, and I am going to make a custom column. Now I get to call my custom column something, cost, and I'm going to say, please take sales minus profit and make a column for me. And just like that, I now have a cost column. And so we can see that $71.94 minus 28 would give me $43. I can then change the type of data this is to a decimal number, and now we have a cost column. Very helpful for me in doing data analysis and telling a data story. It's not just enough necessarily to look at sales, look at profit, but I also might want to analyze cost. And since that wasn't part of the original data set, I used Power BI to create it. Now, another thing I want to do here is I want to take product ID and combine it with product name. That way I have one column that gives me that information. And so I'm going to add a column from example this time. Here, I can go ahead and I can say, let's load this product ID. I can put a space and then a dash and then men's tank top winter special. And now what Power BI does is it says, okay, we're gonna combine two columns and we're gonna add a dash between them. And so I'm gonna go ahead and click OK. Now I have a brand new column. It's called merged at the moment. So I simply rename it. And now we're gonna name this product. Oh, if I could type. We're gonna rename this product. And so now I have that combined column that I can use in a visualization. So these are two quick things that I did to, again, build out my data story, tell my story a little bit better. I'm done here. Let's go ahead and close and apply. And now you'll see inside of my products here, I now have the product. And inside of my sales orders, I now have cost. Now, let's start building some visualizations. We've loaded in some data. The first thing you do before you build any visualization is you want to go ahead and you want to check out your relationships. Power BI allows you to create relationships between disparate data sets based on common columns. In the model view here, I can see that I have a sales order table, I have a product table, and I have a customers table. The relationships between these are one-to-many relationships, depending on how you view them. Some people would say this is many to one. Some people say it's one-to-many. We're not going to arbitrate that in this webinar here. When I hover my mouse over the line connecting the two, I can see how the relationship is formed. I've got a customer ID that is in my customer column and that has a 1. And over here, I have a customer ID in my sales order column and it has a many. The reason this is a one-to-many relationship is because in my customers table, each customer appears with one line. So if you were to download information out of your CRM solution, you're going to have each customer with all of their information across the row one time only, because each customer only exists once, unless we're in some sort of weird Marvel multiverse or something. Each person only exists one time. Same thing with my products. In a list of products, I'm going to list each product one time. My sales orders is a transactional form of data. And that means that a customer might appear more than one time because a customer can buy things more than once. And so therefore I have a one-to-many relationship. And this is the beginning of the preferred method of data analysis inside of Power BI, which is called a star schema, where you will have a fact table that will sit at the middle and then dimension tables that will sit on the outside. And they will all typically have a one-to-many relationship with your transactional data in the center. Now, I'm missing something here. I need a date table, because one of the ways in which sales orders will allow me to analyze data is through order date and shipping date, but I'd like to have a separate date table here that I can use to analyze my data maybe by quarter or by month number. And currently I don't have that. The good news is that Power BI allows me to create it utilizing something called DAX, which is data analysis expression. DAX allows us to help build measures, columns, and other things like full-on tables that we can use for our data storytelling. Now, DAX is very complicated, so I'm going to show you at the beginning here a little bit of a cheat. This is a website called ChatGPT. It's artificial intelligence allowed to be used by many organizations. ChatGPT is good at DAX. It can help with this, just like it can help with Excel or it can help you pick a recipe. We teach classes on Gen AI programs like ChatGPT, and here I've asked ChatGPT to create a date table using DAX for me. Now, I already do know how to do this. I know enough DAX to be able to create a date table, but for people that don't and are struggling with Power BI, ChatGPT and other programs like it, including Microsoft Copilot, can be incredibly helpful. Using plain text, I tell Power BI what I want to do. Create a date table using DAX. I want it to go from 1/1/2019 to 12/31/2023. I want a date column, a month none column, and a quarter column. And here it makes the code for me. Now, all I have to do, folks, and yes, this feels like cheating, is copy this code, come in, tell Power BI I'd like to build a new table, and then just paste the code in and hit enter. And now I have a new entry into our data model created just that quickly that has a date column, a month none column, and a quarter column, just like I asked it to. Now, as far as relationships go, if I come in here, I'm going to see that my date table has no relationships with the other tables. So I need to create that relationship. Part of data storytelling is creating a relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag in my date onto order date. And when I do that, Power BI detects a relationship being formed. It's a one-to-many relationship, just like I would like in the middle, setting up a star schema. It shows me that the date table and the sales order table have dates that are corresponding to one another. And so now I can go ahead and hit save. Now, again, I have a relationship, which means that I can build visualizations based on any of these queries here. And we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's start by building a map. To build a map, I suggest I select the map visualization. And now I'm going to load the data into it. We're going to analyze our sales data at the state location. We're going to look at how we're doing in sales. And then for my legend, would like to go ahead and see my regions. And just like that, I have gone ahead and quickly built a map that shows sales. Hovering my mouse over shows me an additional information. This is called a tooltip. All visualizations inside of Power BI come default with tooltips loaded. Now, one of the really awesome things that you can do inside of Power BI is that I can, if I don't like the way this tooltip looks, I can build a custom tooltip. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to add in a new page. And under my formatting here, I am going to tell Power BI that this is a tooltip page. It's going to make it really small, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here so you can see it a little bit easier. Now, instead of having my tooltip be a little text box, I'm actually going to go ahead and build a quick visualization for my tooltip. What I'd like to see for my tooltip is how we performed in sales categories. And then for my legend, I'm also going to use category here so I can see very clearly with different colors how we've performed. Now, this might be tough to see as a tooltip, so I'm going to add in, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn on our data labels here. We're going to go in and we are going to change our display units here into thousands. Now you're saying to yourself, okay, John, that's a very simple visualization. What exactly is going to happen here? Well, part of data storytelling is making sure that you have interactive components. And so now when I select this, I can come in and I can tell it what type of tooltip do I want it to use. And so now when I hover over, I am not just getting a basic text tooltip, I am getting a really cool way of analyzing my data. How are we doing in California? Great, boss. Hover over, you can see that we've sold almost 26K of sports, 14.76K of footwear, and a little over 7K of apparel. Wow, that's really awesome. How are we doing in Texas? Here is our Texas sales. So part one of storytelling when it comes to building visualizations is utilizing advanced tooltips. Another thing that you might want to do is grouping your data. I'm going to build a visualization very quickly here. We're going to add in our products, and then we're going to see how our products are doing for sales. Once again, I get a visualization here that shows me how we're doing for sales. But I've got all of these products here. And what I might want to show instead of this is how are our top 5 or top 10 products performing versus everything else. So I keep this visualization here because this is an interesting way to tell my story. And then I come in and under products, I can create a group. Where's my groups? Oh, I want to go to product and I want to create a new group. Now, what groups allow me to do is bin things together. So what I can do here is I can come down and I can bin a few of our products here that are high performing products. So SPBB 5229, we'll go ahead and we'll bin that. We'll also bin tennis down here, which is 4891. And then we'll bin our soccer balls. And so we'll bin the 3 top selling products together. And when I create group, now I can rename this group here, top 3 sellers. I can include an other group or create more groups beyond that. By creating an other group here, this will take everything that's not these 3, and now I have a new data category here called product groups. And right next to this, I might build a visualization using this and then our sales. And so while this visualization isn't necessarily incredibly impactful, I can now see that I have one visualization next to here that shows all of my products, which can be analyzed and filtered, and another visualization which contains my binned group data here, so I can see how are the top 3 sellers performing against everything else that we sell. And so you may want to create multiple groups that show different product categories, and all of that is capable inside of Power BI. Now, once we start getting visualizations really well built, there are a couple other things that we want to do to tell our data story. Inside of Power BI, on any individual report page, visualizations are typically interactive. Here you can see that we have a few different visualizations, including a map, including a profit target, how certain customers are performing, and then we've got a sales by profit, and then also by category here. So we've got a couple of different visualizations built. You may notice here that when I click on California inside of this visualization, that the rest of my visualizations go ahead and change and are reflective of the choices that I make inside a visualization. So when I click on California, the rest of these visualizations change. If I come over here and click in basketball, then the rest of my visualizations change. So your visualizations inside of Power BI are interactive, which is great if you've got a boss that wants to come in and click around. But that's a lot of work, and not everybody wants to do that. So another feature that we have inside of Power BI that helps with data storytelling is our bookmarks. Bookmarks allow you to create a view. And what we might want to do, for example, is add a bookmark. Call this default. Then we might select a state, California here. And then we might highlight a specific visualization. Then we would add a bookmark to this, and we might call this California profit. When we're ready, we can move between bookmarks, and you can create 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 or 20, and they can navigate you through and show your customizations that you've made. For example, my boss wants to know what default is. Okay, here's default. Well, you asked how California is doing with profit. Here's California with profit. And then we can navigate through. We can even insert a bookmark navigator, which we can click through using control click, and will take us through the various states. So you can even set it up as buttons inside of your report. These buttons, of course, are customizable. You can change the way they look, and you can set up a variety of different bookmarks to continue telling your story. All of these things will carry over, whether you're talking about using a slicer, which we can set up for different product categories or order dates. We can create bookmarks, and then we can also use, which most of you are probably familiar with, is filters. When I go over to here, I might want to, for example, set up a visualization filter. And here I might want to filter for a specific year. So only show me on this visualization 2022 data, 2021 data. So all of these things carry through and they help you tell your stories. So as far as data storytelling goes inside of the Power BI application, you start your data storytelling by analyzing the type of data you need. You can create and add columns in as you go. You can even create entire tables. One table I'll show you that we can create here really quickly, and then I'm going to upload this and we're going to share it, is let's say that through our data analysis and looking at our data, we realize that we have, data that's got low profit. So we can actually create an entire table of data that just shows low profit items, and then build visualizations for those that just show us our low profit items, utilizing DAX and utilizing custom filters. So there's a lot we can do in terms of telling our data story through Power BI. You have access to shaping and transforming your data. You have access to building visualizations and interactivity between visualizations, utilizing grouping of data, utilizing filters, utilizing slicers, utilizing what was I just going to say? Utilizing grouping of data, filters, slicers, utilizing interactivity, and utilizing bookmarks and spotlighting, all to tell your data story. And then eventually, you will publish these things, and they will go into the internet and can be shared with other colleagues. Now, one of the most effective data storytelling methods that you can set up, yes, please replace. Sorry, I've uploaded this file quite a number of times. One of the most effective things that you can do when you end up uploading into the Power BI fabric here is in your workspace here. You can go to your semantic models and you can set up Q&A. Where is my settings? So inside of your settings, you can set up and turn on Q&A. And what Q&A allows you to do is preload some questions that the AI will go into your data and answer while building visualizations. So one of the questions I might want to ask is, how much profit have we made? And so now when somebody builds a dashboard with this, which they can, we can go ahead and we'll load my dashboard here real quick. Do I have, where is my report? Here it is. That's today. And so now if somebody builds a dashboard with this, and it's easy to build dashboards inside of Power BI, you grab a visualization you like, we'll grab the map, and we can pin it and go ahead and make a new dashboard. And now we can ask questions about our data. And here we can either ask a question such as product category sales, and it will create a visualization for us. And then we can take that visualization and add it into anything that we would like, including pinning a visual right onto my dashboard. And so Q&A is another great storytelling device. It allows individuals to come in and ask questions of your data, get visualizations created that you might not even thought of, and add it to their dashboards. Boy, that time flew by quickly. We've got a couple of minutes left, so I want to give Michelle a chance to jump back in here. We can field any Q&A. This is just obviously the tip of the iceberg of things that you can do inside of Power BI. There are a lot of ways to manipulate and play around with your data. You can add in themes, you can add in color schemes. There's a lot you can do. And if you're interested in exploring this and much more, let's talk to Michelle about what we can do about it here.
Thank you, John. That's so exciting. And I love being able to Q&A on the data. I did want to take a few moments and let you know that System Source offers an open enrollment schedule. We have over 3,000 scheduled courses. Hundreds are guaranteed to run at any given time. And those classes go out through the end of the year. Among them, of course, are our Power BI courses. They're very popular, fill very quickly, and they don't cancel. So the trifecta there. These courses are a great solution for individuals or small groups, that are in need of training. However, if you have a larger group of people on your staff and maybe you want to customize it to your business use case, we do private training for that too. We have a special open enrollment price for registrations placed in the next 2 weeks that you'll see there on your screen, and you'll get a copy of this after the session as well. On your evaluation, you're going to have the opportunity to request information on open enrollment training, on private group training, on licensing, if you still are still working on your Power BI licensing. We appreciate you taking the time to complete that survey to let us know how we did today. Super important. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the classes that you see on the screen there and maybe the differences between them, because it can be confusing. Microsoft has a free version of Power BI and they have paid versions of Power BI. So we have the two bottom classes that you see there, the practitioner and the professional. What's the difference? The first 2 days of both of those classes are the same. The professional adds a third day, and that's for those of you who have paid licenses. That will go into a lot of the templates and things that are built in and the extra tools that are built into the paid version. So we often find people sign up for the 2-day because everybody wants their training in less days than more, and then asking us on day 2 to come to the third day. So if you do have a paid license, I encourage you to consider that. But we do try to make it as easy on you as possible if you sign up for only 2 to be able to attend the 3rd and get signed up for that. I will tell you, I have 3 seats total left in March. So if you're interested in those classes, I suggest you email soon or call us soon. Also, we have a class that's fairly new. It's run a few times, Microsoft Power BI Dashboard in a Day. So all of you that don't want to take 3 days, don't want to take 2 days, there is a 1 day that covers all of the topics that you see here. But I will caveat that but by saying it is jam-packed. There's a lot going on in that class. So what we find is you would take this course if you have some prior experience with Power BI or you have completed one of the other 2 classes. So because Power BI is so intense and there's a lot going on, many people take the 2 or 3 day, and then after they get that base knowledge, they go back and take the dashboard in a day so that they can better apply the skills that they learned and get a little bit of extra practice time, if you will, in the 1 day course. So those are available for you. Jon is rated very highly by his students in Power BI. They love his approach, and I think you would find the same. With that said, Jon, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I think we have a question.
Sure. I can't see any questions. For some reason, the Q&A is not showing to me, but
I will tell you the question.
thank you. That would be very helpful.
Can the data be dynamic? How do you update with new data?
So yes, the data can be dynamic. Now, I'll answer your question very quickly. The answer is yes. You in the Power BI Fabric, which is the last thing I showed you, you can come in and you can go ahead. Do I still have the Fabric open? I'm not sure. You can come in and you can set up the semantic models to. I have like 15 browser window open. Here you go. You can come in and you can set up the semantic models to auto refresh. Now, what will happen is that when you do that, you come in here, you can come, I misclicked, you can come into settings and you can do it. That's the report anyways. When you go into settings, you can then set up the refresh and how it refreshes automatically. And so you can set a refresh schedule for it. I can't do that here because I have to install something called the on-premises data gateway. But you can go through and you can look and you can refresh and set up data source credentials. You can come in and see I don't have the gateway set up on my home PC, but you can do that. So yes, you can do dynamic data sets. In the actual report view, there's a refresh button. And what will happen is it will go out and grab data from those data sets, and it will bring in new data that's been added in. Now, most of the time inside of Power BI, you're taking snapshots of data, but you can also create live connections. You can direct connect, direct query sources like SQL databases, as long as you have user credentials and a good enough internet to do it. And those will refresh automatically as well, part of the semantic model. I'm using Excel data, so it's not live, but you can do this with live data. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Linda. Good. I'm glad we answered that question for you. We'll leave it open for just another minute to see if there are any additional questions. Otherwise, we just thank you so much for joining us today. We are past our time. When you close out the session, you will receive a survey. We appreciate you taking a moment to tell us how we did today and how we can improve for other seminars in the future. Thanks, Jon.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day. Come take a Power BI class. I'll teach you all this stuff and 1,000 things more.
Awesome.
Bye, everybody.